Yes, thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice break. And before I introduce our poets, I would like to remind you that we are inviting both our live and live streamed audience to write poems in response to the poetry of our season's featured readers. So all of you students here who have Marita as a teacher, you should write a poem in response to one of her poems and then send it to our anthology. You can read all about it on our website, and it's kind of exciting. If you are not a newsletter subscriber, please do feel welcome to go to planetearthpoetry.com and sign up so you can stay in the loop. And so without further ado, I didn't ask you which order you wanted to read in. Should I invite you up first, Trisia? Yeah? Sure. Okay, Trisia Eddy Woods, all the way from Alberta. Trisia is the author of A Road Map for Finding Wild Horses. She's also a visual artist, I saw, and her work is gorgeous. So check it out online. Her work has been exhibited both close to home and internationally, and is held in special collections in Heron Art Library. Trisia is a former editor of Red Nettle Press, and Tricia's writing has appeared in a variety of literary journals and chapbooks across North America, including Contemporary Verse 2, the Garneau Review, and New American Writing. Trisia and her family, both human and non-human, live in Treaty 6 territory. Please welcome Trisia Eddy Woods.
Thank you, Karen.
Pull it in a bit.
How's that?
Oh, great.
Perfect. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I don't get to Victoria very often, despite having family here, so it's a wonderful opportunity for me to not just visit the land, but the people, and it's especially wonderful that I was able to do it in conjunction with reading with my dear friend Marita this evening. So it's all in all very, very wonderful for me. I'll give you just a little bit of background about the book. I started writing most of the material for this book about 10 years ago. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the fact that we have wild horses in Canada, of course, on the East Coast and Sable Island. You have them in British Columbia. And the wild herds in Alberta live along the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. It's about a 5-hour drive from my home in Edmonton. And initially I had started going out there because I am a horse lover. I have horses in my own life, and I was really interested in photographing them just as a hobby. But of course, the more I started to spend time out there, the more I felt this deeper connection to the landscape. And also, of course, in Alberta, it being Alberta, we have a lot of industry development that happens in the eastern slopes. So I started to really come into conflict with a lot of the activity that was happening in that area. Of course, most of it is hidden away, but the more time you spend out there, the further you go into the slopes and up the mountains, the more you see, right? So I started writing about that as well. It became about more than just the horses. It became about this conflict of being a human on the land, but then also that ironic pull of the fact that the only reason I could access this area was because I was driving on roads that were created by industry. So I tried exploring that. That was the impetus for this book. It is laid out, like I said, over several seasons, but it kind of travels through spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So I'll read a couple poems from each season. April knows when to pause. 1. There is a break in the trees where the sun has decided to rest for a while. Wild horses linger, lips drooping with the promise of thaw. 2. The waters at this time of year are strong and menacing. A man and a woman on the banks of the Panther River share a tale about taking their horses across, how their dog went halfway and then refused to go any further, turning back. I am left with the image of a black and brown shepherd sitting at the river's edge, watching forlornly as humans and horses continue down the trail, over the embankment, into the veil of trees. The anxious dog whines and waits. Keepsakes. The only bears I've seen so far this spring are in their traces. They hide out, sometimes with the words I am searching for. I can feel them when I leave the trails, sit with my face turned towards the sun, a prickle up the spine. A tree trunk pushed over, the ground churned by a methodical mauling of hibernated hunger, a long tongue eager to taste the spice of insect larvae and switchgrass shoots. Tufts left on branches, an imprint of broad feet, leather deeply embedded on the residue of winter. I collect these remnants as souvenirs, carry small knots of hair in my pockets to roll between my fingers. Um, so now we're moving into early summer. After the first few years of me venturing out on my own, I decided that I could share this space with someone, and I started bringing my daughter with me. And the very first trip, actually, I was really worried that I would go through all of this effort to bring her with me, and then we would not even see the horses. But the very first trip that she came with me, we came across a herd, quite a large herd, and it was a very quiet evening, and she just got to experience the most magical evening. So that's what this poem is about. Light sources. I bring my young teenage daughter with me, her first search for wild horses. Time together feels precious. We sit for long hours through a late afternoon with a band of 2 mares and their 4 young ones in the distance, sedate from summer heat. We make photographs of silhouettes in slow motion, silhouettes in a waning twilight, silently wishing the flies would leave. The whole group of us, mares, yearlings, mothers, daughters. My daughter has a certain energy of silk and gentle rain about her. The horses move closer in increments. One hoof falls, an ear turns, a head lifts and then lowers. She holds out a hand and they bend and swoon at her imaginary caress. Mosquitoes hover over this newly formed herd, sensing, tails flicking. Simultaneously, our skin shivers. She crouches to the ground, and one foal extends a whiskered nose. I stay back, letting them almost touch. We all breathe together, exhaling. The sun catches the mosquitoes in my lens and turns them into points of light. We stand tenderly with our feet in the water. I'll read this short series just because I feel like it really speaks to that conflict I was speaking of. It's quite jarring when you're out in an area that's so remote and then come upon the oil wells. And I found it hard to write about at first, but uh, most of the poems were shorter. You know, it wasn't something I wanted to explore very much, but I think I'm ready to do that now. So the next book will be Restricted Areas. 1. When you arrive on this landscape, those pump jacks groan, pistons gliding with each wheeze, pressure. Narrow trails lead to keyholes containing sour gas, chain link, warning signs, a loud vibrating beam squeals amidst lodgepole and limestone invading. 2. Each road ends in an abrupt fragment. Hoofprints tell tales of separation. A body sorrows to hold the story of surviving here. 3. Wild horses ask, "Why are you a stranger to your body?" I reply, "The earth hurts." I'm going to read 2 poems just in honor of something that I'm sure we've all experienced. This is Wildfire Season 1. There is a pool of clouded water beneath me, the surface an iridescent bloom of oil masking reflection. Inhale smoke, lungs seared, our eyes full of dust. Another spring, another forest burning. 2. This year, we eat the last of the green grass in early summer. Autumn is amber, straw-colored, parched. Fires surround us, and we travel hundreds of kilometers to avoid the acrid smoke that coats the tender insides of our nostrils, hangs from our manes, tangled with burdock burrs. The cadence of frogs faded since spring. We pass through dry streams as though they are sunken bridges. We absorb the vibration of each felled tree through our cannon bones. Our hoofprints a memorial of belonging. Each footfall an extra heartbeat. We have iron and oil in our veins. And I think I'll read 2 more pieces. I'm reading this one in honor of my sister-in-law who is here tonight because we were talking about mountain lions today. A path is made by expectation. There is a tender path that leads through the grass to the creek. The way its edges undulate makes the passage difficult to follow, as rain and ice have washed several seasons away. Each being who uses the path is guided by the scent and imprint of the one before, and each goes ahead on blind faith. There is a destination worth discovering. Horse, deer, and elk step with discretion, dropping their heads every so often to inhale any potential threat. Wolf and mountain lion pad silently, secretly. The water flows for them with purpose perpetually. And I'm going to finish with a prose piece that is a little bit longer, but another adventure with my daughter. And this one is one of my favorite pieces. So now we're into winter. We're into Alberta winter. I don't know if anyone has experienced Alberta winter. Mother and child. It is a cold, biting day. My daughter and I have made the trek through layers of winter to photograph the season's changes so far. It is morning, yet closing in on noon, so the sun is as high in the sky as it will travel, barely hanging on the horizon. Trails are deserted, with the odd snowmobile track carved in fresh snow. There is a difference between feeling alone and feeling exposed. Up ahead, we see a dark cloud of crow and raven. A bald eagle takes wing and launches itself high into the air, then dives back down, briefly scattering the scavengers. There is a ripple, part excitement, part trepidation. There is only one reason for gatherings like this. Violently red blood appears on the pristine white landscape. Shocking, not surprising. Instantly, we imagine someone has shot one of the wild horses, as has been known to happen. Speed limit signs and warnings of sharp curves ahead are also targets, peppered with bullet holes. This blood is still bright from the night before, perhaps even this morning. My instinct is to help somehow. I grab my camera from the backpack, instruct my daughter to stay here. My feeling is that she needs to be protected from the disturbance at the end of the trail. As soon as I turn to leave, I remember she is on the brink of adulthood. Her silence tells me children know death too. The path is easy to follow. There are tracks, dirt, dried leaves stirred up from underneath, disheveled. Several meters ahead, a large mass lies still on the ground. My breath catches. Clenched, I realize I've just left my daughter alone. I can discern two separate bodies, a dozen feet apart, one significantly smaller than the other. A mother and her child. Far too large to be horses. They are moose, a cow, and a calf. Hunting season long over. Headless corpses left as waste, poached. In the back of my mind, I recall that a calf moose requires a special license and must be identified with its head intact. Scavengers perched on the apprehensive poplars are eager for me to leave their feeding site. I sink to my knees in the transfused snow. Remembering my camera, I swing it from my back to capture the scene for a report to Alberta Wildlife. I am suddenly a morbid portrait photographer. I am suddenly the disturbance at the end of the trail. Wind bites, an acute reminder of my daughter watching me. Her figure strains, wanting to see what I see. The sting on my cheeks is frozen tears. My nose is running. I wipe it on the back of my glove and wonder what I was protecting her from. The imagined nightmare is just a bleak scene of uncomplicated loss. Just sharp cold I can feel in my own bones. The clearing is silent, aside from a single crow calling out lament. Sky and ground both painted the same shade of gray blue. Ice crystals hung in the air, reflecting this frozen mother and her child left to be reintegrated into the landscape. Thank you.